Picture this: a world where the air hums with secrets, where every glance shared between two souls carries the weight of 1,000 unspoken promises. That's the world I live in with Ronan, my husband of 8 years. I'm Isla, 35, and I've come to understand that the heart of our bond isn't just in the way our hands brush or the warmth of his breath on my neck. No, it's deeper. It's in the raw, unguarded moments, the risks we take together, the silent understanding that passes between us like a current. We've built something rare, a trust so fierce it feels like a living thing, pulsing with every step we take into the unknown. And oh, how we love to chase that unknown, to push the edges of what's safe and familiar, to see how far our connection can stretch before it trembles. Our life together is a mosaic of escapes, stolen weekends, and impulsive journeys to places where the rest of the world can't reach us. We thrive in the wild, in spots where the earth itself seems to challenge us to be more, to feel more. Remote beaches with crashing waves, forgotten trails in ancient forests, anywhere that strips away the noise of everyday life and leaves just the two of us, bare and real. It's in those places that we rediscover each other, testing the strength of what we've built, daring it to hold under pressure. I won't say much about the specifics of our adventures just yet. Let's keep that mystery alive for now. But I will tell you that each trip feels like a new chapter, a chance to write another line in the story of us. This time, our destination was a secluded mountain hotel, tucked away in a rugged, windswept valley that seemed to guard its solitude with jagged peaks and endless sky. The place was a fortress of stone, its walls weathered by time and storms, standing defiant against the elements. As we pulled up, the scent of pine hit me like a memory I couldn't quite place, sharp and clean, mingling with the crisp bite of high-altitude air. Outside, the wind howled in the distance, a low, mournful sound that seemed to echo through the bones of the valley itself. I remember stepping out of the car, my boots crunching on gravel, and feeling a shiver that wasn't just from the cold. There was something about this place, something ancient and untamed, that made my pulse quicken. We'd packed light for this getaway, just the essentials tossed into a shared duffel bag, as if shedding extra weight could somehow free us even more. The drive up had been filled with laughter. Ronan's off-key singing to some old rock song on the radio, my teasing him about his terrible taste in music. We bantered back and forth, the kind of easy rhythm that comes from knowing someone inside out, from years of shared mornings and late-night confessions. By the time we arrived, there was this electric hum between us, a thrill of anticipation for whatever this trip might hold. Checking in at the front desk was quick. Just a nod from the weathered clerk, who handed us an old brass key with a tag that looked like it had been hanging there for decades. We made our way up a narrow staircase, the steps groaning under our weight, and when we finally pushed open the door to our room, I couldn't help but pause and take it all in. The space was small, but felt like a sanctuary, with creaky wooden floors that seemed to whisper stories of everyone who'd stayed here before us. A heavy quilt lay folded on the bed, its patchwork pattern faded but comforting, like something my grandmother might have stitched. The large window drew my eye immediately. It framed a breathtaking view of a snow-dusted ridge, the peak sharp and white against a slate-gray sky, as if the world outside was holding its breath. A faint smell of wood smoke lingered in the air, curling around us like a memory of campfires and quiet nights, grounding me in this strange, beautiful place. Ronan dropped our bag by the door and came up behind me, his arms slipping around my waist as we stood at the window together. I could feel the warmth of him through my sweater, and for a moment we just watched the snowflakes drift lazily outside, tiny specks of white against the vastness. It was the kind of quiet that feels alive, charged with the unspoken, and I knew he felt it too. After a while, we decided to bundle up and explore the hotel grounds, pulling on our coats and scarves, our boots crunching against the frozen earth as we stepped outside. The air was sharp, biting at my cheeks, and our breath hung in visible puffs as we walked hand in hand along a narrow trail that wound through the property. The path was slick with patches of ice, the trees lining it heavy with snow, their branches bowing under the weight like they were guarding secrets of their own. We hadn't gone far when Ronan's foot skidded on a glassy patch, his arms flailing for a split second before he caught himself. I burst out laughing, the sound echoing in the still air, and he shot me a mock glare before grinning. "Oh, you think that's funny? Just wait till it's your turn to eat snow," he teased, nudging me with his shoulder. I shoved him back playfully, daring him to try and trip me, and we went on like that, trading jabs and laughter, betting on who'd slip first. It was silly, childish even, but it was us. Those little games, the way we could turn a frozen trail into a playground, reminded me how much I cherished this, how much I cherished him. By the time we looped back to the hotel, the cold had seeped into my bones, but I didn't mind. We stomped the snow off our boots at the entrance and headed straight for the dining room, where a quiet dinner awaited us. The space was dimly lit, candles flickering on every table, casting warm golden light over the worn wooden surfaces. We settled into a corner near the back, the murmur of other guests fading into a soft hum as we focused on each other. The meal was simple but hearty. Roasted vegetables, tender meat, and a glass of red wine that warmed me from the inside out. But it wasn't the food that held my attention. It was Ronan's gaze, steady and intense across the table, like he was seeing right through to the parts of me I don't always show. We didn't talk much during dinner, but we didn't need to. The silence between us was heavy with meaning, a silent agreement that this night, this place, was about to become something unforgettable. After dinner, we lingered for a while, the candlelight dancing in Ronan's eyes, until the dining room began to empty out. The hotel felt quieter now, almost too quiet, as if it was holding its breath along with us. We decided to head down to the lobby, curious to see if the fireplace was still going, if there was a chance to soak in a little more warmth before retreating to our room. As we descended the creaky stairs, I noticed the lights flickering slightly, a faint buzz humming through the walls. By the time we reached the lobby, the power had gone out completely, plunging the space into near darkness. The only illumination came from the faint glow of phone flashlights scattered among a few lingering guests and the dying embers of the fireplace, casting a weak orange haze over the room. The air felt heavier down here, thick with an eerie stillness that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Outside, the wind howled, a distant, mournful wail that seemed to press against the massive window, where slivers of moonlight reflected off the glass like fractured ghosts. The cold seeped through the ancient stone walls, wrapping around me like a shroud, and I pulled my sweater tighter, feeling the chill settle into my bones. The only person at the desk was Eli, the young receptionist we'd seen earlier, barely out of his teens by the look of him. He stood there, looking flustered, his hands fidgeting with a pen as he mumbled something about a generator issue. His voice was shaky, almost lost in the vastness of the lobby, as he apologized over and over, his words tumbling out in a nervous rush. I nodded, offering a small smile to ease his obvious discomfort, but my attention was already drifting elsewhere. The scene around us felt surreal, like we'd stepped into some forgotten painting, shadows stretching long and jagged across the floor, the faint crackle of the fireplace barely audible over the wind's relentless cry. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the edge of something, teetering between the ordinary and the unknown. Ronan stood close beside me, his presence a steady anchor in the dimness. Then he leaned in, his breath warm against my ear, sending a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. "Do you like this game of light and shadow?" he whispered, his voice low and laced with something dangerous, something thrilling. My heart pounded, a wild rhythm in my chest, and I couldn't find the words to answer. I just stood there, silent, caught between nerves and a growing intrigue, my pulse racing as I felt the weight of his questions settle over me like a challenge. And then, in that moment, under the cover of darkness, with Eli just a few meters away at the desk, something shifted. We moved toward the massive window near the fireplace, half a meter from the dying embers, the faint heat barely reaching us. What happened next was a rush, a daring act of intimacy that felt both reckless and inevitable. The darkness seemed to grant us permission, cloaking us in its anonymity as our movements became urgent, almost silent, driven by a need we couldn't name. My breath hitched, adrenaline flooding my veins, every nerve alight with the thrill of it all. Ronan's hand held mine tightly, grounding me even as the world seemed to spin, his grip a lifeline in the chaos of sensation. I could feel the cold glass of the window at my back, the contrast sharp against the heat building between us, and I was hyper-aware of Eli's presence nearby. I stole a quick glance toward the desk, my heart thundering so loud I was sure it could be heard over the wind. But the darkness was our shield, and the moment, raw, electric, and fleeting, passed like a secret only we shared. Now, as the adrenaline ebbed, a different kind of weight settled over me. My legs trembled, not just from the cold seeping through the stone floor, but from the sheer intensity of what we'd just done. I squeezed Ronan's hand, feeling the warmth of his palm against mine, and without a word, we knew it was time to retreat, to let the shadows of the lobby fade behind us. We moved quietly, almost instinctively, pulling out our phones to light the way with dim, bluish beams. The corridors of the hotel felt like a labyrinth in the dark, the narrow hallways stretching endlessly, the walls seeming to close in with every step. My flashlight caught fleeting glimpses of faded wallpaper and old portraits, their eyes seeming to follow us as we navigated the creaking stairs. Each groan of the wood beneath our feet echoed in the stillness, amplifying the sense of isolation. My knees still felt unsteady, like they might give out at any moment, and I leaned slightly into Ronan for support. He didn't say anything, but I could feel his steady presence beside me, a quiet strength that kept me grounded, even as my mind raced with the aftershocks of our daring. The silence between us as we walked wasn't uncomfortable, but it was heavy, charged with unspoken thoughts. It was as if we were both sifting through the same whirlwind of emotions, trying to make sense of the boundary we'd just crossed. I kept replaying the moment in my head, the cold glass, the heat of his touch, the thrill of being so close to discovery. My pulse hadn't fully settled, and I wondered if he felt the same lingering rush, the same mix of exhilaration and vulnerability. Neither of us spoke, though. We didn't need to. After all these years, we could read each other in the quiet, in the way our steps synced, in the subtle tightening of his grip on my hand. When we finally reached our room, I fumbled with the old brass key, the metal cold against my fingers, before the lock clicked and the door creaked open. The air inside was frigid, a sharp contrast to the heat still lingering in my veins. The darkness here was thicker, unbroken by even the faint moonlight that had filtered into the lobby. My phone's light swept across the space, revealing the faint outlines of the bed, the heavy wooden dresser, and the window framed by heavy curtains. The view of the snow-dusted ridge was hidden now, swallowed by the night, but I could still hear the wind howling outside, a relentless reminder of the wildness surrounding us. We stepped inside, closing the door with a soft thud that seemed to seal us away from the rest of the world. Without a word, we moved to the edge of the bed, sitting side by side, our hands still clasped. The mattress dipped slightly under our weight, the springs creaking in protest, and I could feel the roughness of the quilt beneath my fingers. The cold bit at my skin, making me shiver, but Ronan's warmth beside me was a quiet comfort. For a long moment, we just sat there, letting the silence stretch, the weight of the night settling over us like a blanket. Then he turned to me, his face barely visible in the dim glow of our phones, and his voice broke the quiet, low and raw with sincerity. "I'm even more in love with you. And with how you glow in the dark." His words hit me like a wave, flooding me with a warmth that chased away the chill. They were a validation, a quiet acknowledgement of the risk we'd taken, of the trust that had carried us through it. My chest tightened, a swell of emotion I couldn't quite name, and I felt my feelings for him deepen in that moment, rooting themselves even further into the core of who I am. I turned to look at him, catching the faint glint of his eyes, and I knew he meant every word. It wasn't just about the thrill. It was about us. About how we could find strength in each other even when the world feels like it's spinning out of control. As we sat there on the edge of the bed, the weight of Ronan's confession lingering in the air, I felt the need to cocoon ourselves further from the cold and the chaos outside. I tugged at the heavy quilt, pulling it over us like a shield, its faded fabric rough but comforting against my skin. We slid beneath it fully, lying down side by side, the mattress creaking softly as we settled in. The wind howled beyond the window, a fierce, untamed sound that seemed to rattle the very walls of this old hotel. But under this quilt, we created our own small world, a sanctuary of warmth and whispers. Our voices dropped to barely audible murmurs, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile intimacy of this moment. I turned to face him, the darkness under the quilt so thick I could only make out the vague outline of his features, but I didn't need to see him to feel him. His presence was everywhere, in the heat radiating from his body, in the steady rhythm of his breath. "You know," I whispered, my voice trembling just a little. "It's these moments, the risks, the stolen glances, the way we dance on the edge of getting caught, that make me feel alive. It's what keeps us burning, keeps us us." I paused, letting the words settle, feeling the truth of them in my bones. I could sense him nodding, even in the dark, and then his hand found mine under the quilt, his fingers intertwining with mine in a grip that felt like a promise. "I feel it too, Isla," he murmured back, his voice rough with emotion. "Those heart-pounding seconds, the secrets we share in a single look. It's like a fire nothing else can touch. I don't care what anyone else might think. Out there, the world can judge us, label us, try to box us in. But here, in this space, it's just right. It's our language, isn't it? Something only we can read. His words wrapped around me like the quilt itself, warm and heavy, and I felt a lump rise in my throat. Society might never understand the way we love, the way we thrive on the edge, but in this moment, their opinions felt like distant noise, drowned out by the storm outside and the quiet strength of our bond. Lying there, I let my mind drift to a memory that felt like a mirror to this night, a moment from years ago that had etched itself into the foundation of who we are. "Do you remember that blackout at the beach cabin?" I asked softly, my voice barely carrying over the sound of the wind. It was our 2nd anniversary, and the power went out just as a storm rolled in off the ocean. We were stuck inside, no lights, no heat, just the sound of waves crashing like they wanted to tear the world apart. And we pushed boundaries that night, didn't we? Not just in the way we touched, but in the way we spoke, the truths we laid bare. I told you things I'd never told anyone, fears I'd buried so deep I thought they'd never see the light. And you held me through it, didn't let me fall apart. That was the night I knew I could trust you with anything, everything. My voice cracked a little at the end, the memory so vivid I could almost smell the salt air, feel the damp chill of that tiny cabin. Ronan squeezed my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles in a slow, grounding rhythm. "I remember," he said, his tone thick with the weight of that shared past. "That night changed me too, and right now, under this quilt, with the world shut out, I've never felt closer to you than I do in this moment. It's like every risk we've ever taken has led us here, to this exact place." His words pierced through me, striking at the core of everything I felt. And I shifted closer to him, needing to feel more of him, to anchor myself in his warmth. I rested my head on his chest, his arm curling around me instinctively, pulling me even tighter against him. The steady beat of his heart under my ear was a rhythm I could lose myself in, a reminder that no matter how wild or reckless our adventures got, this, us, was my safe harbor. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, wrapped in the cocoon of the quilt, the storm outside a distant roar as we drifted into a restless sleep, our bodies and minds still buzzing with the echoes of the night. The next morning, I woke to a world transformed. The first thing I noticed was the light, harsh, artificial, and unforgiving, streaming through the gaps in the heavy curtains. The power was back, and with it, the hotel seemed to shed its mysterious, shadowy allure. I blinked against the brightness as I sat up, the quilt slipping off my shoulders, and glanced around the room. The creaky wooden floors, the faded patchwork on the bed, the old dresser in the corner. They all looked so ordinary now, stripped of the magic the darkness had lent them. It was as if the hotel itself had returned to the mundane, shrugging off the wildness of the night before like a coat it no longer needed. I couldn't help but feel a pang of disappointment, a quiet longing for the thrill of those unlit hours, but I pushed it aside as I nudged Ronan awake. He groaned softly, rubbing his eyes, but a slow, knowing smile spread across his face as he met my gaze, and I knew he was thinking of the same stolen moments I was. We didn't linger long in the room. After splashing cold water on our faces and throwing on some clothes, we made our way downstairs to the dining room for breakfast. The space was brighter now, the candles from last night replaced by the stark glow of fluorescent lights overhead. The warmth of the previous evening's intimacy felt like a distant memory under this clinical illumination. But as we settled into a small table by the window, Ronan and I exchanged sly smiles over our steaming cups of coffee. It was a silent acknowledgement, a shared secret that no one else in this room could touch. The clatter of dishes and the murmur of other guests faded into the background as I sipped my coffee, the bitter warmth grounding me, while our eyes locked in a quiet conspiracy. What we'd done, right there in the lobby under the cover of darkness, was ours alone, a thread in the intricate tapestry of our bond that no one could unravel. As we ate, simple fare of toast, eggs, and fruit, I couldn't help but steal glances at the doorway, half expecting to see Eli walk by, and sure enough, as we were finishing up, I spotted him at the reception desk across the hall when we passed by on our way out. He was hunched over some paperwork, his young face still carrying that nervous energy from the night before. Our eyes met for a fleeting second, and I noticed his gaze dart away quickly, his cheeks flushing a faint pink. I wondered if he suspected anything, if he'd sensed the undercurrent of something forbidden in the air last night. But instead of guilt, I felt a quiet pride swelling in my chest, a confidence in the boldness we'd embraced. Let him wonder, I thought. Let him guess. What Ronan and I shared was beyond explanation, beyond judgment. It was ours, carved out in the shadows, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. Back in our room, as we started packing to leave, I found myself reflecting on this trip and all the ones before it. Each escape, each risk, had woven us tighter together, not through the conventional romance of flowers or sweet nothings, but through the audacity we dared to chase. This mountain hotel with its ancient stone walls and fleeting blackout, had become another chapter in our story, another test we'd passed with flying colors. I zipped up our duffel bag, the sound sharp in the quiet room, and glanced over at Ronan, who was already scrolling through his phone, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Found anything yet?" I asked, leaning over his shoulder. He tilted the screen toward me, showing a list of remote hotels and cabins, each one promising solitude and the kind of untamed beauty we craved. "How about this one?" he said, pointing to a secluded cabin nestled in the heart of the mountains, where the only sounds would be the whisper of the wind through the trees and the crackle of a fire, promising us the perfect escape we had been dreaming of. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.